Hello, hello, Internet world. This is JC Bavlin, filling in for Norma Joe today. Oh, look, if you look at my glasses, you can see me holding my phone. That's so weird. Anyway, so today's episode will be about the Twilight Zone. I've been listening to some Twilight Zone podcasts, so I listened to some in the past, and it's just kind of like I enjoy it. It soothes me. When I've been through all my other forms of entertainment that our culture is so dependent on these days, and you try to find something that matches your mood so that you can constantly have this influx of some form of empathy and the illusion of company. You see what I'm saying? So, when all that runs out, and I find myself in a state of mind that nothing in my grasp accommodates, I turn to Twilight Zone podcast because it's famous enough that there's a plethora out there, and I can find new descriptions of the same thing that I know the content, but I want to hear a fresh voice on it. Yeah, you know what I mean? So I do not have the typical taste in movies, shows, and other forms of entertainment that involve actors. My enjoyment of the visual media, I tend to err on the less emotionful side, and I don't require, not necessarily that I don't require as much depth, but just different forms of depth than others, and I see depth in different places, where some might say there is none. So, anyway, that brings us to the subject of this episode, which is a Twilight Zone episode known as The Mirror. And I noticed that actually the one that I listened to today, they seemed kind of favorable towards it, but in general, this episode seems to get kind of negative reviews, but I think it's very underrated. It's not a well-known episode. I don't remember ever seeing it on one of those marathons that come on, or at least used to, on 4th of July and New Year's, along with fireworks. He would always have Twilight Zone marathons. So, anyway, I don't remember seeing it back then. It wasn't in the rotation, but I've come to really enjoy it now that I know of its existence. So, basically, what happens is that there is this guy, he's supposed to be like Castro, and he overthrows it's a very simple episode, and I think that's why it doesn't get as much respect as it deserves, because it's just very simple. It doesn't really deal with how to be a good person, or the question of life or death, or the question of is there life on other planets, or it doesn't answer any of these big existential questions, which I think a lot of people expect from the Twilight Zone. But I like it, and I think it's a very underrated psychological thriller, a short film, I suppose you could say. Basically, this guy, he's supposed to kind of be like Castro. He throws out the new dictator and he becomes a new dictator. That simple as that. But the thing is, as he is throwing out the old dictator, the old dictator he knows he's gonna die in a horrible way. And he just gives this one last curse to his new overthrower, which is that there is a mirror inside the office, I guess, the office of the dictator, where the entire episode takes place. And I think that's another thing that causes people to detract from this episode, because it is very much, could easily be done on the stage. It's very much kind of in the manner of a stage play, with one setting in which everything happens. There's supposedly a crowd of people outside, but you never see them, you only hear them cheering, so it could all easily be done like as a stage production, which to me, as I said about my personal taste, is a plus, because I am very attracted to, anyone who knows me personally, or might have said it on my channel a few times, excuse me, Norma Joe's channel, that I am very attracted to silent film, even though I'm not an aficionado yet. But the few silent films I've seen, I enjoyed, because I really like, people will say it's hammy overacting. I actually kind of like it. I like, I mean, not to the point of being like a buffoon, but I enjoy, gestures and communicating things with body language. And the theater and silent film obviously have that in common. So I like that aesthetic to the episode. But basically in the office there is a mirror, a full-length mirror, and as the old dictator is going out to his execution / torture, he basically puts a curse on the new dictator, played by a very hot and sexy young Peter Falk. And he tells him, you know, live it up while you can, because in a very short amount of time, this dictator shit is gonna blow up in your face. And you're gonna be living in fear all the time. You ain't gonna enjoy this. Excuse me, you will not enjoy this. And fear will follow you everywhere. You will be in a constant state of fear that somebody will come to overthrow you. And, yeah. So, basically, that plants a seed in this guy's head. He has a sexy name, too. I think his name is Ramos, and then his last name is Clemente. That's a sexy-ass name. Excuse me. But, anyway, where was I? Right. So, the thriller aspect. The psychological thriller. I really like it because the twist that I see is never spelled out in the episode, but it's just there. I think it actually treats the audience with a lot of respect. Or maybe it just wasn't intentional what I'm seeing, but is nonetheless there, and I think makes a really good episode. So, basically, the old dictator, as he's going out, he says, when you look in this mirror, this is a magic mirror, it's like blessed or whatever, and you'll see the faces of the people who want to kill you in there. So that plants a seed in Clemente's head that, you know, of course he's gonna say, like, fuck that, he's bullshit, fuck you, and everything, but then it starts to get to him, you know what I mean? And I was just talking about this with my mom the other day, how seeds really do get planted in your head, because I think humans as a species, some people are more or less, but we're all kind of impressionable, and even if you keep it in check and you know what's going on and you keep your wits about you, it's something you always still have to fight against. It's kind of like when these woke people talk about inherent bias and inherent prejudice and shit like that. It's the same concept. It's like, once something's planted in your head, you don't have to act on it. You can fight against it and all that shit, but it'll still be there. And I was talking to my mom about this because, like, you know, basically I was saying how, like, when you pass somebody on the street, right? Especially I'm from San Francisco. I lived in San Francisco for like what? The majority of my life, like 26 years or some shit like that. I moved away twice, both times for only 2 years each. So basically I'm San Franciscan through and through. And San Francisco, as we all know, is extremely crowded. So when you go out on the streets, before the pandemic, of course, you're gonna, especially if you're downtown or something like that, which I used to work close to downtown, so it's just crowds of people all the time. You come and go, you just go around people, you don't think about it. But then this, as part of the new movement, somebody started talking about, I'm gonna move my laundry. Somebody started talking about how, what are they talking about? People started talking, I can't remember who it was who first stated it, but it was this whole bullshit of who moves aside for who on the street and everything like that, and they're saying like, if you're a woman, you're black or whatever, and somebody who, somebody doesn't move aside for you, if they're like a man or they're white or whatever, then they don't respect you and they think you're a piece of shit, which I think that's bullshit. I don't think there's any I mean, sure, it might happen once in a while, but I don't think there's any, broad truth to that. But and I move aside, when I'm on the street, I don't think about it, I didn't. I used to not think about it. I'll just go along my business, and if somebody's on the street, and if they move, they move, if I move, I move, I wouldn't even think about it. If I moved aside for somebody on the street, I wouldn't be able to tell you the next second, oh, did you move aside or did they move aside? I can't remember because I didn't even think about it, But now, I always think about it because that seed got in my head, you know what I'm saying? And, it just kind of makes you angry, It's like every time somebody doesn't move for you, you kind of think, do they think I'm their bitch, And shit like that. But, anyways, so, the same shit is going on in this episode, So basically, he's looking in the mirror, right? And he has 3 or 4 friends. I can't remember. They're like a little gang, It's like all his top generals that helped him overthrow the old dictator or whatever, And what should I call it? And he's let me go get my little stand. It's all his, yeah, so basically, the whole thing is when you're a dictator, who's gonna throw you over the most likely, Is it gonna be some rando fucking from nowhere, some peasant or whatever? Or is it gonna be one of your friends that's already close to you, the whole thing of somebody's gonna rape you, kidnap your kids or whatever is probably the one the best. Danger comes from within, all that shit. So, I don't want to only show the top of my head. I'll put it right here. You can get up close and it's right on the edge of the dryer. And up close and personal look as I throw my clothes in here. I kind of gotta hurry up. But anyways, so what I'm trying to say is the conclusion is that his friends, he looks in the mirror and one by one he sees them all trying to kill him, right? With guns, knife. I think the first guy had a gun, then he had a knife, and the last guy had a poison cup of wine or some shit like that. It doesn't matter how they were gonna kill him. The point is, every time he looked in the mirror, he saw one of his friends, because he'd be talking to one of his friends, right? And his friend's right there, and so when he looks in the mirror, he sees his friend, behind him, in the mirror. They would be, except that in the mirror, instead of just standing there being innocent, they have some form of killing him, right? Or, they're about to. So then he kills them, right? Each time he sees that. But here's the deal. Every time he looks in the mirror, who's the one who's in the mirror 3 times? It's him, you know what I mean? And that's the whole point, is at the end of the episode he kills himself because it's basically his own paranoia getting out of control. You see what I mean? That's kind of the point of the episode. And that's why people say it's lame. They're like, oh, whatever, he just, okay, cut and dry story, boring. But I don't think it's boring. I think it's kind of cool because they kind of forget the fact that, it's yeah, the point is that at the end he can't handle the pressure, and that's why he kills himself, because he keeps seeing danger everywhere. Which I think is interesting, as it is, considering we live in a very paranoid society, and I think a lot of people will find, they can find relation, like they relate to this character, you know, if they watch it. I related to him. I related to his paranoia, and at the end, he gives this great, like, just, he just says this thing where because he's talking to the priest. He's been up for like days. He's like falling asleep at his desk with his gun because he can't let himself sleep, you know, and he's just like passing out and everything, and you know, his fear has really got the best of him. And it's like, he says to the priest, like, he's like, I can't live like this. Every time every, like, second I look around, like, I look over my shoulder, I worry constantly. And I'm just like, does that not perfectly describe the anxiety of, like, you know, a lot of people, you know? So, basically, I think the interesting thing is that he did see the assassin in the mirror every time. Like, most people that review this episode, they kind of just take it on face value. Like, yeah, his friends were gonna kill him. You know, and that's what the mirror was showing. It really was magical. And that's kind of what, you know, on face value. But I think the more interesting thing is that I don't think his friends were gonna kill him. Maybe later, but, you know, I think that's not the point. Like, I think the point is that his friends weren't gonna kill him. Like, I think the point is that he saw them in the mirror, but he's in the mirror too, you know, he's forgetting this is a mirror, like, he's the one every time he sees his friends in the background behind him, like, trying to stab him in the back or something, but he's the one right there in front. So when the old guy says, you're gonna look in the mirror and see the face of your assassin, he's forgetting that he's seeing his own face 3 times. Every time he looks in there, he's the common denominator, you know what I'm saying? And So yeah, like, I think that's kind of interesting. And then, so my take on it is this, right? Like, I think when he's seeing his friends in the mirror, he's not seeing their intentions the way they really are. Like, basically, his friends might as well not even be in the mirror. When he sees the images of his friends in the mirror trying to kill him, he's actually seeing a projection of his own mind, basically, which I think is actually pretty trippy. Like, pretend like his friends might as well not even be there. He's seeing himself, his reflection of himself, and then the projection image, like a phantom kind of his friends behind him trying to kill him. But that's not in reality. That's like what's going on in his head, you know? So he's seeing that. It's almost kind of like a delusion, you know, or something. And then that causes him to kill them. And, you know what I mean? So I think it's actually a pretty good psychological thriller when you think about it. Yeah, could definitely see that being, like, explored further. I mean, a lot of movies have already done shit like that, where it's like, oh, it was in my head the whole time, you know, and shit like that. But I just think it was good. It's better than a lot of people make it out to be. So this has been JC Babylon, signing off. Till next time.